Shut up and sit down.
I am a radical libertarian.
And we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You deserve better.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
You just take an issue that's important to you and do something.
There you go.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
Because no one brings tear gas to a gunfight.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only.
Fight for liberty.
This is the cherry on top.
This is FSM.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fight for Liberty. I'm your host, David Fite, here to get you fired up about the men and women out here making the world a freer place through politics, activism, journalism, and more. This is our first show back from LibertyCon in DC a few weekends ago, and I am so excited to share with you guys the content that we got there. We got 10 killer interviews, nice short 15-minute interviews with some of your favorite people in the movement, and maybe some people you didn't even realize were in the movement. So I'm really excited to share that with you guys within the next week or two. It'll be up exclusively on civil.com. Some of my favorite people. So definitely, if you don't already have an account, go check out Civil and get ready for some awesome content over there. But tonight we are coming at you live on Free Speech Media Network, bringing you the stories, conversations, and events the old corporate media won't. And it is our mission here on the show to give you some hope for the movement and the future while providing actionable advice and inspiring stories that help you get out there and fight for liberty yourself. If you are watching this on YouTube, I would really appreciate it if you'd click the link in the description and go on over to Rumble. We were having a little bit of an issue there for the first couple seconds, but I think we're good. Go check out Rumble. They pay us a little bit better. They keep our content up there. They don't take my videos down like YouTube's been doing. So go check them out. Would really appreciate the support over there. Tonight, we have a U.S. House candidate out of Florida coming on the show. But before we bring him up, I got just a couple of quick words from our sponsors. First up being MyArkit. Nope, that's the wrong one. Which overlay I think I deleted accidentally. Whoops daisies. MyArkit. Save your digital legacy for generations. Don't just save your pictures where they are at risk of being censored, deleted, or lost. MyArkit gives you security and privacy at a great price while telling the whole story in your own voice and writing. Unlike a cloud backup to just dump all of your random pictures, MyArkit has you upload a full memory at a time. So picture or short video post with text and or audio captions create a timeline that makes going back through your memories an easy and pleasant experience for you and your loved ones. You can sign up today for a 30-day free trial. There's no payment info necessary. It's an actual free trial. So you can go to myarkit.com and use promo code FSM. If you do want to end up paying for it in the long run, you'll get 10% off there with your account. And it's just a great service. It's a great company. Some really cool people behind it. So definitely go check out MyArkit. I'll say the same thing about my other sponsor, our newest sponsor, SHRUM, all-in-one grow bags. Growing shrooms now radically simple. Effortlessly grow higher quality shrooms wherever you like. No tubs, no tents, no dedicated grow clean space, no mycology experience needed. Like us, mushrooms breathe oxygen in and CO2 out, and SHRUM's unique filter strips provide significantly better fresh air exchange, a superior way to let CO2 out and establish a fortress against mold and bacteria. The process is simple. You just inject your preferred liquid culture into the grow bag, put the bag on a shelf and wait, and then harvest your own homegrown mushrooms. So you can order yours today at shroomgarden.com. Again, use promo code FSM, or you can click the link in the description. That'll save you $5 on your first order. Again, that's SHRUM garden.com, promo code FSM. And again, an awesome group of people, an awesome product. Can't stress this enough. You guys should really go check them out. And we'll probably have the owners back on the show here pretty soon for this one. So I'm excited about that. But without further ado, joining the fight tonight, we have the Libertarian Party candidate for United States House of Representatives in Florida's 6th District, Mr. Andrew Give DC the Bird Parrott. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it is a pleasure. I do want to start off by first just giving a big shout out to Joe Hanush, an amazing member of LP Florida's Candidate Support Committee, who put you on my radar and helped set this up. And so, Joe, you're awesome.
He is a valuable asset, for sure.
He's just such a good guy, too. So it's like a win-win. We always like to start off the show with a little bit of like a philosophical testimony. So I'm curious, when did you first hear about the Libertarian Party and what got you involved?
Well, that really goes back to the first Ron Paul presidential run back in '88. I was still in high school, and we were just at the point of starting to get, notice what was going on in the political world. And, well, what are these parties about? Who's the president? What's, why should we care? And we'd heard about the Libertarian at that point, and I thought, okay, that sounds like to go, because I was kind of hanging around with the in the punk rock scene in the DC area, and it was cool. So we didn't like the whole government thing. We wanted the small government. We wanted just freedom and liberty for ourselves. And we said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Fast forward a couple of years, and I get actually to the point of being able to get out there and make my voice heard. And I'd heard Rush Limbaugh, and I said, and he and his crowd and Newt Gingrich and all of those at the time, they were saying, we're going to make a smaller government. We're going to take America back. And said, well, that's the winning team, so I want to be on it. And unfortunately, I fell into the trap of over and over and over again voting for Republicans, waiting for the smaller government to come. And I think we're $37 trillion in debt now, last I checked. So the government isn't getting any smaller. And the COVID times really kind of brought me back to this, where I said, enough is too much. I'm done with them. So I went ahead and changed my party affiliation to the Libertarian Party, where it should have been all along.
Nice. Well, welcome home. Glad to have you back.
Glad to be here.
It's wild. I just assume at this point, and because so many people that I've asked that similar question, some sort of a how did you get started question, a lot of them go, well, that goes back to the first Ron Paul 08 is what, like a solid 2/3 of my guests say, not 88. So that's kind of cool. And I definitely had, most of my friends that were of voting age at that point in time had no idea what libertarians were. And like, I had to introduce my dad to the party in 16 with Gary Johnson. So that's it's awesome that you were in the kind of a punk rock scene that actually, I guess, practiced what they preached and
tried to, at least.
Yeah. All of my punk rock friends that I grew up with were, the mask Nazis, like the instant turned into like they're all like hardcore leftists. It switched from fighting the government to fighting the man, which they then like have kind of shifted into this more Marxist socialist idea of like, oh, it's just the rich people and the people in charge are the bad guys. It's a sad progression of things.
That's an ideology I never could quite get behind.
Same here. So you are running for the U.S. House of Representatives in a special election that's going to be on April Fool's Day, which is fun. I like that.
The guy running on April Fool's Day. I mean, the jokes should write themselves. I haven't. Maybe I'm not that clever, but here we.
There you go. So tell me about the situation causing the special election. Why is there an empty seat?
Well, that was Donald Trump took the congressman of my district out of his place and moved him on up to National Security Advisor. And I'm sure going to be a great place for him. Hopefully he does well. And, I wish him all the best and fewer wars. So I saw the opportunity that with a candidate like the Republicans are putting forward, that it's a largely Republican district, that this would be the best chance to try and draw some over to our side. To your roots are really in Liberty. You really need to come over here. I'm the candidate that you need to hear from. You need to hear the Liberty message, and that's something that I thought this would be quite a much better opportunity to do that rather than a general election where this is the most important election of all of our lives. Your vote matters. You must vote blue. You must vote red. This one is the one where people are actually, I'm hearing from both sides. I don't want any more of this. Who are you? So that's why I'm here to tell them I'm the voice of liberty. I'm going to be the one that is going to go and work for them and not for the Democrats and not for the Republicans, but for the 6th District of Florida.
I like it. I feel like the people that vote in special elections are a slightly different type of voter. You know, the mass of uninformed voters that show up every November don't always show up in May and April and October and whenever we pick these weird ass special election dates. It's usually the people that know what's going on or paying attention, actually realize that their congressman is now national security advisor. I'm sure a third of your district doesn't even know that. But not to, talk bad about constituents, but that's just the American average at this point. But so yeah, I like it. It's a good strategy. When I ran, it was kind of like a weird middle, best and worst of both worlds, because it was a special election, but it was on a normal election day, so it was still in November 5th or whatever. But I was the only person up for city. I was the only city council seat up in all of New York City. So it was like hyper focused on just my district, and then like one other seat. And it was an interesting race, but I like the strategy of the special.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of money flowing in. Not in my direction quite yet. I heard that there was at least $2 million worth of Fox News campaign ads put out. So that's those. Boy, I wish I could get our message out with that kind of money, but here we are.
I hear that.
Stick to putting it, keeping it real. I've been giving my campaign phone number out on Twitter, and that's kind of the way X I plan on operating when I get into office. Is my phone number is there. You call me. I help you navigate the swamp. I plan on going through and helping Donald Trump at this point cut a massive swath through the swamp to make it so we can see to the other side where we actually have less government, have a smaller footprint of the Fed.
Are you allowed to talk bad about the swamp being from Florida?
Well, this is going to go probably, maybe tomorrow morning I'm going to be going out for a walk in the Marshall Swamp. It's right around the corner from the house, and it's really kind of peaceful, calm.
Nice. Had to make the joke. I could not.
I'm from Swamp, Florida. It's a good swamp.
There you go. So I noticed looking into the race a little bit, doing some background. It's a little bit of my job this week, at least. And Randall Terry is also running in this special election. What is your plan to set yourself apart from him as the kind of third option?
Well, I think the major party backing doesn't hurt things. We are pretty well aligned on, he and I both are of the pro-life crowd. So I have mad respect for him for that. I know he didn't do too favorably in the most recent election as he was running for president. Mm-hmm. That's unfortunate. But I would say that my difference in that respect of that issue especially is that I'm not necessarily going to say we need a law, totally not the libertarian way, because all laws come with the threat of violence. We don't like that. I'm saying we need cultural change more than we need legislative action. And that's something that I think really should resonate with all of my constituents, whether they're from the left, from the right, or, from the we don't care, just get off my.
Those are our easiest sells. I feel like I love it when I door knock and I meet a grumpy person that's like, I don't want to talk about politics. It's like, oh, you're mine. Like, I got you now. That's great. Yeah, I got the pleasure of meeting him in Vegas at Freedom Fest when he debated Jill Stein and Chase Oliver, because I was temporarily helping out Chase Oliver for the day, and he's cool. I like him. I don't like all of his campaign platforms. Obviously, there's definitely some policy disagreement there, but he's got a catchy way of presenting some of what he has. So I feel like even if you guys are able to kind of run against each other nicely and in a way that can draw attention, that might be better for both of you. If you guys can get a couple of debates in, or even like a joint event or something like that, where just one person speaks than the other, it's like, here's your other choices. Come hear from him, and kind of maybe piggyback off of his recent or more uptick in name recognition from this past election, but also kind of help each other out would be nice.
I'm all for a coalition government. I was speaking with a nice young lady, retiree from just down at the flea market a couple weeks ago, and she asked me, well, what do you think about Bernie? And I said, I like the guy. I like that he's willing to point out that there's a lot of problems, and I just said, we're probably just going to want different solutions to the problems. We're going to attack them in a different way. So that's my theory on all of politics. We need to get out of the tribes and get back to, if we're going to have a representative, they should actually represent your values.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So Aaron Baker in the comments asks, how do you feel about concealed carry on college campuses as proposed by your opponent, Randy Fite?
Well, I'm about as Second Amendment absolutist as we can get. I actually have somewhat of a plan to essentially remove all restrictions nationwide for the concealed and peaceful carry of a firearm. And it shouldn't limit you from being, whether you're on a college campus or at a at a church. If the private property owners feel that you can be trusted with it, especially here in Florida, we already have you can't carry at work, let's say, but you can carry in your car even if you have a no firearms on the premises policy from your employer. So that's a very good start. I didn't carry a firearm when I was building fire trucks, so I not necessarily the place or time for it, but I'm not necessarily opposed. I haven't looked at the fine points and details of the proposed legislation, but that's something that the more freedom, the better, no matter how you slice it. As long as big bill. That's another one of my problems with some of these proposals that people make. Who's going to pay for it?
Yeah. Luckily, if you do this one right, it shouldn't cost anything, because it's just getting rid of enforcement arms of different things. Of course, if you have to institute some sort of a licensing process that then creates a whole nother thing, then that's where you start getting into the bills.
Complete opposite of the licensing process. Here in Florida, we have on the back of your driver's license, if you were a sexual offender, you will have a line that says Florida statute, something, something, something. I don't know. I don't have it on my license, so don't get any ideas. You have that on there just as a heads up to the law enforcement folks that you may interact with, that you are in fact a sexual offender, If you are a sexual predator, you have in big red letters, sexual predator. So what I propose is, and this will go nationwide because we're computers, we can do anything quickly and with minimal compliance cost. A simple picture of a 1911 with a circle, red circle and a slash on the back of it, that being for prohibited people. This also will come along and make it so that we don't have to worry about background checks, because you will not be a prohibited person. You don't have the mark on your license. Have the gun same day. Enjoy yourself. Don't hurt anyone. That's a simple solution that removes me having to go through a background check every time I want to purchase a firearm. It eliminates a lot of government need of compliance cost where we're paying for the background checks. I know they're billed at $5 a piece, but if we can avoid that, let's go ahead and do that. We can take those agents of, law enforcement agents and let them do something more productive.
Yeah.
Kind of the plan. So
I like that. Pardon me. I always thought that licensing for things like that was kind of silly, even before I understood my political opinions and joined the LP and everything. It was one of the issues that brought me to it, not just guns itself, but the way that the regulation actually works versus would make sense to work. Even when I wasn't a Second Amendment absolutist, I was still like, this doesn't make sense. It would be so much easier to just define who can't own a gun and make sure that they never get one. You would think at least it would be a lot easier to do that than it would be to go through all of these background checks and everything every time, or then you have the loopholes that everybody's going through. And I know people, obviously not going to name names or anything, but I know plenty of people who don't need to, don't even, like, it's not even for cost necessarily, but have bought guns on the black market instead of the white market because it's just too tedious to get it legally in their state, especially a handgun. Like here in New York, it takes between 6 to 9 months to get the little piece of paper that says you can go buy the gun you were looking at. Oh, I don't want to do that. That's silly. Yeah, I like the plan. It's a good one.
Yeah, in that vein as well, with the prohibited persons, that's something that needs to be much more narrowly tailored, more directed at violent offenders, more so than the guy who got caught with weed and a felony amount of it in his teenage years is now prohibited forever from owning a firearm. That's not a good idea. So we need to really work our way around who we restrict from that liberty, and if you do it to yourself, well, that's on you.
Yeah, actions have consequences. I'm trying to teach my 6-year-old that at the moment. Got sent to his room early tonight, and I just trying to explain to him, you could have not. That was your choice. I think there should still be an element of you can have pure liberty with still consequences for actions and logical responses to things. People can't just hurt people or steal their stuff or violate the non-aggression principle if you want to be super libertarian about it. But we don't need to hurt everyone while we're at it.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people make a lot of mistakes about the libertarian versus libertine. Mm-hmm. When we've got a lot of that inside the party as well, where there's a lot of people that just want to do whatever, wherever, whenever. That's not good for your neighbors. It's bullying people into your way of thinking it's not going to win you any converts. So. Yeah. That's kind of another reason that I am exceptionally more comfortable in this party than in either of the others, of the major parties.
Yeah. Aaron has another question. I like these questions. Keep them coming, Aaron. These are good questions. Fine says there are no local issues in Florida's 6th. What issues have you seen that need to be addressed? More local.
Well, local, one thing that we're definitely working on is we are growing like crazy. And so there's a lot of infrastructure things that need to be addressed. And that's, I drive frequently down 40 to get out to Daytona Beach from Orlando, or from Ocala rather. And I drive through the forest, and the roads are kind of narrow, kind of small. That would be one. If I had to say, there would be a widening project on that, because, campers and trucks driving through there, they tend to hold up traffic. And, well, I like to get to where I'm going when I'm going there. Other things, I know that Veterans Affairs is something that I'm definitely all about. Again, there's people that I've spoken with that are desperately in need, and having better, especially mental health care access here, because I spoke with another fellow who's having trouble getting the VA to cover his mental health evaluation. He's a veteran, and he doesn't have any time frame where they may be helping him out, or they're saying it's not service related. If anything, that's one thing that is the most exigent of all circumstances, is a mental health problem, and it needs to be dealt with right now. So if we find sometime later that there's no need, which is, I find to be a highly unlikely thing, there's usually a need if you're asking. That if it comes down to that, we can bill you later, but we need to take care of the problems now, and that's a huge thing. With in the growth side, housing is another big problem that we need to address. I know that there's a lot of discussion about the elimination of property taxes, and less taxes is more better for me. Making up that revenue somewhere here locally, we're going to have to wrestle over that one, and that's going to probably result in something that I would like to see is more homeowners associations taking over their own infrastructure issues. That way, if you live there, you want to live there, you pay for it, fully transparent. That's kind of like Prospera down in Honduras. They live under the laws of Honduras, but they have a little bit more autonomy, and they're their own nation. Well, not nation, but their own city, where they almost Libertopia. But and also in that same vein, there's some banking reform ideas that I'm kicking around now that will make it a little bit more favorable for individuals over investors to get a hold of the properties that are out here being bought up by the boatload by BlackRock and State Street and all the other big investment firms, because when they see the markets are possibly going to go sideways, they hop into the real estate market, and that's really driving prices up because they can afford it. They can afford to outbid anyone else down here that actually has to worry about their credit score.
Right. I like it. Those are some good top issues, and not your typical libertarian ones per se. I like that you actually had a real answer on like the roads issue. That's a good, solid, ironic for a libertarian candidate, if you know the inside baseball. But for the other people that you're out there talking to, that's something that I feel like they don't get from a lot of politicians. It's like, oh, here's a tangible problem that I'm sure you've experienced yourself as well as me. Like, we're all driving on the same road. It kind of sucks. Let's make it a little bit better. I like that. And the VA for sure is something that, whether you know someone or not. I'm sorry, what was that?
And I like the Rothbardian ideas of, the merchants associations and private individuals. And that's one reason I lean towards if there's a neighborhood that wants to take care of things themselves, let that be the model for the future, for going forward. We didn't get into the financial mess that we're in now overnight. It's been, since the early part of the 20th century that we really got into all this mess. We're not going to get out overnight with, perfect libertarian solutions. We have to be wise about how we spend our capital.
Yeah, for sure. And I was gonna say, as far as the VA issue, I think it's something that most people have at least a grandparent that has to deal with that. That was almost that entire generation. Well, that's grandparent, maybe great grandparent now for some people, but somewhere between World War II and Vietnam, I had everyone in that generation in my family, all my great aunts and uncles, both grandpas, like the whole family, and then the whole next generation too, my dad and my uncle, and everyone else in that generation on both sides, or every man at least, I should clarify. And it's just a terrible system to interact with about 80% of the time. Every once in a while, my dad will come home and be like, "Oh, I had to do this, and the VA, it was so quick and it was easy, and they paid for it perfectly, and it was beautiful." It's like, oh wow, but that's definitely a rarity, Just a silly anecdote. I'm watching a show right now called Resident Alien, and the whole premise is alien crash lands on Earth and has to pretend to be a human. But we're into like the third season now, and couple of the main characters are part of the, like kind of Men in Black, whatever secret government agency that researches aliens. And one of the characters in the last episode I watched just flippantly says, "Yeah, the VA used to donate like vegetables and people that couldn't think for themselves to us, and we would run experiments on them in my old department." And it just kind of throws that out there as one of the most believable lines in the entire show, right? Because it's all about like aliens and all this crazy shit. So that just gets thrown out there like, oh yeah, no, that's what the government's probably doing. Like that just seems like not even a little bit fictional. And especially having to interact with them as much as I have, it's super believable.
I don't think there's a lot of folks that really trust the government anymore. And we've gotten to a point where we can really see that not necessarily doing well for all of us. One of my favorite quotes is by Abraham Kuyper, and he said that every bit of government welfare, basically, I'm paraphrasing at this point, is a blot on our Savior's honor, and that we've forgotten about giving for Jesus' sake. So getting the government out, that would let the churches be free to help out a lot more, because that's been a problem over the past, several dozen decades now, that the government takes more and more responsibility, and then the community says that's the government's problem. So the way out of this mess is to build better communities, and mine just happens to be around a church because it's the one that gives me joy. So it works out really well for me. So I can say with a great degree of certainty that we can do better, and lowering the tax burden on the individual and on businesses as well, again, through the fair tax, which is, again, one of my jams. Yes, taxation is theft, but let's baby steps out of it.
Yeah.
So that we can forget that there is any taxing authority over us, and use that national retail sales tax that replaces the income tax to really make it so we don't feel the paying of taxes as much.
Mm-hmm.
Say, what am I getting for my money every time you do have to pay it? Unlike the withholding, but that's a long story there.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on the baby steps, and the fair tax, I think, is a good model personally. I know there's probably some people watching right now that are gonna yell at me for that one, but I've heard the complaints. I've yet to find a more palatable, while also more libertarian answer. I think it's the best of both worlds. It's the most likely thing that we could ever actually sell to the current American populace, as far as something that we would be happy about.
And as we reduce the amount of government services over time, that tax can conceivably shrink.
Yeah.
And shrinks, we get to keep more of our own money and invest it however we see fit in whatever programs to help the homeless. Because if you give, $1 million to a group that is there to help the homeless, let's use Los Angeles as the marker there, half of that immediately goes to salaries of the administrators.
Mm-hmm.
So people are getting rich off of the homeless industrial complex. The problem could easily be well, I can't say easily be fixed, but it can be fixed without government in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. We're getting the worst snowstorm we've had in upstate New York, or like central New York, in about a decade right now. We just had maybe about 6 hours ago, they lifted the travel ban that was in effect for a little over 48 hours of just, if any unnecessary travel could get you, arrested or ticketed, style, just like a ban on driving anywhere or being on the roads. It was kind of crazy. It was a ghost town when I walked to the gas station last night. But it does something to everyone experiencing it at the same time that I always love, because you're just I feel like it's thousands of people trauma bonding at the same time, where it just breaks down so many of the societal walls that we have built up over the last couple of decades, where it's weird to talk to your neighbor. If you're getting into your car and they're getting into their car, especially from my generation, you don't say, "Oh, hey, how's it going, Bob?" That's weird. You don't even know that his name is Bob. I've lived next to the house next to me is student housing, so it's new people every year. I have no idea who any of the people that lived there last year's names were. Never talked to any of them. This year, I know most of the house because I've had to help all of them push their cars out of the driveway at some point in time in the last 2 weeks. And one of them helped me pull my garbage can up the driveway the other day because it was just, a foot and a half of snow that I'm just trying to drag a big ass garbage can up through. And it's just a sense of community that I feel like we don't have 99% of the time. But every once in a while, I'm sure, in other parts of the country, the hurricanes and tornadoes and earthquakes and all of the other things have a very similar effect. But I've only ever lived through a blizzard as far as natural disasters go. And it feels good. I don't know. There's just this weird, good feeling of experiencing that near disaster, especially because blizzards don't actually do that much damage. So that also helps. Not a lot of people lost their house this week. They just maybe lost a couple days of income. And we are all just kind of okay, but willing to help out, have a little bit more time, have a little bit more energy. We're already outside. We're already cold and wet and annoyed. Might as well shovel your neighbor's driveway too. And I think that every time I experience that, it gives me a little bit of hope that we could make that the norm again. That my generation's still actually capable of it. Because for a while I was in doubt.
Yeah, it's hard to see, especially with the way that we've kind of everybody has gone online and not a lot of folks are out just going out to play. My more friends now that he likes to go out in the forest and drive around on some of the ATV trails, and he finds friends out there. People that he'll later on go over to their house and they bring them over to his house, and everybody. Once you find something that you love and you find a community that you can get along with that makes you happy, that's great. Usually the political communities that I'm seeing are making people more unhappy than happy. They get entrenched in their tribal way of thinking. favorite read lately is Andrew Heaton's "Tribalism is Dumb," and if you get a chance, it's fantastic. There are more minotaurs and saber-toothed tigers in it than I was expecting, but Heaton, so it's a good read. Anyway, he says that if we try to take all of our political philosophies and cram them into left or right or red or blue, that it's like saying all of the world's religions can be either divided into Protestant or Catholic. Oh, you're a Muslim. Well, that must mean that you're like a super Catholic, or yes, that means you really hate the Pope. So you must be a really really good Protestant. It doesn't fit. We can't do that, and that's another reason to be here and to say, look, there's a way that we can do this, and everybody gets to be free. I'm not for on the street like anyone else is, but we have to also say we can't just lock people up for possession of anything. If you're not hurting anyone, you don't need to go spend time in the special box.
Yeah, if only we could treat life like hockey. You know, the penalty box is only there if you hurt somebody else, you broke the rules. You know, you can even duke it out with somebody as long as they drop their gloves too. You know, that doesn't always even result in a penalty.
As we saw, what was it last Sunday with the USA Canada thing?
I actually just I watched a little bit of the highlights when it happened, but I finally today got to sit down and actually watch the full game. It was an amazing game.
And being from Florida, I'm not much of a hockey fanatic, really. Much of a sports fanatic, anyway. You know, I've immersed myself in other endeavors, so you know, politics is fun if you play your cards right.
There you go. I've definitely gotten a lot less into sports ball than I was when I was growing up, but I am in upstate New York, so obviously a substantially different local opinion on the sport of hockey. And I live in a college town that has like a really good D3 college hockey team. So they're not great. None of the people that I watch are ever going to play in the NHL or anything like that, most likely. But we go to the playoffs almost every year, and it's like we win 2/3 of the time and have since I was a kid. So it's a good team to be a fan of. You know, it's not like being a Detroit Lions fan or something. But my son has started to get more into hockey, so now I'm getting into it again with him, and it's been fun. And this is the first time we've had international hockey in almost 10 years. So like the US Canada rivalry has just been brewing for almost a decade. And that was the first time we got to actually see it play out. And yeah, 3 fights in 9 seconds was kind of wild.
It's a little intense, yeah. But people say I went to a fight and a hockey game broke out. You know.
Yeah. That's the only thing I don't like about college hockey is they do not allow actual fighting, and you can like get suspended from your school for doing it, let alone the game. So there's a lot of pushing and shoving. It's a lot more like football where they just try to be as rough as humanly possible without ever actually throwing a punch or anything like that. Which has its own merits, and it's kind of fun to watch people just try as close to beating someone up as possible without actually being accused of it. But yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit weird to be so anti-government and like anti-America in a lot of ways as I am out loud so often. But then you see something like that, and it's like, USA, fucking America, let's go. Like they were blaring Freebird after every goal, and I'm just like, yeah, I am like your Trumpiest, like most patriotic Republican dork when I'm watching sports like that.
I gotta say, some of the things about America are great, and the fact that we came up with Freebird, gold. I mean, that's just the way it ought to be.
Yeah. That even came out of Alabama. That's not even one of our good states.
Hey, good enough for that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna claim the win on that one. Just go team.
There we go. I like it. It is a great country, and I think that that's something that we miss a lot of times as libertarians, and it hurts us when we end up running for election and have to market to not just the people who are really close to us and maybe we're trying to like bring people into the party, but we actually need to appeal to the masses. Is, you know, you can be a patriotic libertarian, and there are plenty of them, but they kind of get drowned out by the really loudly anti-patriotic ones, and it's nice to have just some of the stuff you've already said in this conversation, not even before we got into the sports stuff, is just more, I don't know, no, like palatable to normies of just like you know, it's you don't sound like a crazy person, but you've still gone and hit like every like anarchist talking point that I would want you to hit while also not sounding like a crazy person. So I like what you're doing so far.
I've always kind of leaned the minarchist route where, I can never, the Michael Malice, you can go that far, but I'm not quite going to go to say, no need for any government at all. If we were living in a perfect high trust society with tight communities, yeah, we could do without government. But given the amount of stuff that we have to deal with here, I think we're probably the minimum the better, and we've ceded too much of our power to the government, and too much of our authority to the government. So if you look back to your youth, you always had that authority figure in the neighborhood who was like, if you were cutting up, I'm going to tell your mother, and you heard about it when you got home because that authority figure was there. So we do need people that have authority over themselves, and we can't expect people to hit all the notes right out of the gate. They can't. We have to make steps toward that. It's our current teachings on Wednesday night here are be ye holy, and our pastor was telling us a lot about, we don't expect people who are brand new into the church to say, I know everything and I'm going to be perfect in every way. This is a journey. We all take it together. We move slowly through the process. We do it day by day. We look at our lives and we say, how am I going to be closer to God? Or if we want to look at it as libertarians, how am I going to structure my life where I need less government, where I need less authority over me because I am the ultimate authority over me.
Yeah.
So it's a process, and it's ongoing, and we have to be eternally vigilant. It's just the way that we have to live our lives. When I talk to people here, I'm out on the kind of the periphery of the district, right on the edge of the line, and I talk to people and say, so what district do you live in? Who's your congressman? I get a lot of embarrassed I don't knows because we've gotten to the point where we do see, if I vote for this tribe, I'm going to get this. If I vote for that tribe, I'm going to get that. Well, sometimes, as in the case that we're looking at now, we're going to get things that we didn't look for, that we didn't want. And I can't remember where it was. I want to say it was either Washington or West Virginia or Oregon or somewhere. A transgender Satanist ran for sheriff as a Republican and won the primary.
Mm-hmm.
People were like, well, wait a minute. We didn't know all of that. And he said, exactly. That's your fault. So getting more engaged, not to the level of, running for office necessarily or calling your congressman every day, but being able to be involved at some level to know what's going on in your community, nationally, internationally. Pick something and make it your passion. So not everybody's going to know what trouble's being caused in Washington by, what congressman. There's 435 of them. They don't necessarily, they can't all be AOC and, people or Thomas Massey. And so we have to we have to know that who we're sending is going to do the job for us, and that's again one of the main reasons why I'm choosing to run at this time. Just now is the time to break the cycle.
I like it. Yeah, I've always said that people that come from a like evangelical Christian background have a leg up in libertarian politics, because I think one of the key understandings is that for us there's a lot of policy positions, but at the end of the day it's really a philosophy that we're trying to impart on people, and you can't argue anyone into a philosophy. You can't bash someone into it. You can't convince someone of a philosophy. Only they can accept it. Just like with being saved, you can't save someone. They have to save themselves. You can even be the person that's sitting there like praying the prayer with them. You're still not the one saving them. Jesus is, and they're choosing it, and you're just there to facilitate. And I tell people a lot, because especially like newer libertarians, they start to understand most of the stuff, and then they start to go try to tell their friends about it. And why can't I get through to this person? And it's because you're trying to get through to them at all. Like, it's not going to work. They're not going to change this opinion in most cases, in my experience, until they talk to someone who has the opinion they do now and says it badly, and they take your opinion and play devil's advocate with it for half a second and go, well, what about this? And then that person shuts them down and gives a terrible answer, and then they find themselves defending your position instead of their own. And then they start to realize that, oh wait, no, this actually makes more sense than what the other guy is saying. That's, at least in my personal experience, that's when people change their opinions on most of the deep political issues, like government getting out of abortion or something like that, something that's just really hard to come to terms with for people. It comes when they're the ones defending it, and then they go, oh wait, no, I think this is actually right. You're never going to get someone in an argument and convince them to be philosophically an anarchist or a libertarian. You might be able to convince them on a couple of policy positions, but that's about it.
Yeah, and it's like even down to the global conflicts and what we can't spread freedom with bombs. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
That's a 10,000 foot view there, but you can't bully people into a position and say you have to accept it. It just doesn't work that way. People will naturally dig their heels in and say, well, I'm not going that way. And I was that way myself. I didn't really come from a Christian background. I came from my dad was a Baptist. My mom was a Presbyterian. They couldn't quite agree on where we should be going to church. So they said, oh, we'll let the kids figure it out. Let's just say that did not go well. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s when I finally found a church. I'm 53 now. And I finally said, yeah, this is the way. This is the method of making me happy. And even if it comes down to it, and there's, even if we don't end up with a libertopia like we all want, or I don't end up going to heaven because there is no heaven, I have still lived, and I do believe that there is. But even if that's the case, I've dealt with my fellow man the best way I can. I've lived a life that someone around me can be proud of. That you're not going to be ashamed of saying, I'm a libertarian or I'm a Christian. We shouldn't be ashamed of either. We should say, these are the ways that we feel, and come hang out with us. We will treat you better than anybody else.
That's good. I like it. I think that a lot of times we forsake the person to person like evangelism of libertarianism in our daily lives because we think we're doing enough of it in our campaigns or our podcasts or our Twitter accounts or whatever. And then we just kind of shut down around our actual, like, in real life friends. Like, oh, I don't want to talk about politics. I want to talk about the game or the dinner or whatever. I'm not going to drag them into this. And, similar to Christian evangelism, it's not about bringing up constantly like Jesus is great. Did you know that? Like that's not it either. It's about being a good person and living your life in a way that's a little bit different than the people around you, in a way that people notice and start to actually ask you about. And why are you so generous of a person? As well, because I believe that God calls us to be, first and foremost, but also because I think that it's gotten to a point where way too many people rely on the government to do things that their fellow man should be able to do. And, if we just got a little bit more used to giving a couple bucks here and there and helping people out, we wouldn't need these $1 million bureaucratic bullshit organizations. And that's a lot easier of a sell to somebody who just watched you hand a homeless person a 20 versus somebody that's asking you, well, why do you think we should be getting rid of the government? Is a huge difference in a conversation.
Yeah, that's walking the walk.
Mm-hmm. So Joe in the comments from the shout out earlier, hey Joe, what does Andrew Parrott think of government sending money and arms to foreign governments? That's a softball, but
pretty softball. No, I think that we've got enough trouble at home. We need to fix our own house before we go out seeking monsters to destroy. That's an oldie but a goodie. If let's say we'll use the fictional country of Albonia. If Albonia wants to go and destroy their neighbors, and they need some bombs to do it with, and we want to be friendly with Albonia, we should just make sure that Albonia buys their guns, their bombs, their missiles from Lockheed Martin. They can go into debt themselves and fight their own fight. We don't need to be involved in it. My tax don't need to go fund our debt to Lockheed Martin. We don't need that. We need a strong military, yes, but we also need to keep it here at home. And that's another reason that if you have an opportunity to tell anyone in your state, in the state legislature, about the Defend the Guard program, where we keep the National Guard troops here, we do not send them overseas for anything except for training outside of a declared war by Congress. And I can tell you pretty much that that's been one of those that hasn't happened. And the GWAT was a pretty good example as to what can go wrong when we turn over our National Guardsmen to whatever, and we end up losing people. People end up in very bad shape. So we can say that that's a good way to go about, defending ourselves. So yeah. Also with the, I'll just throw this in there with the Gaza thing that Donald Trump is talking about now. I know that there's people on both sides he's not talking about a resort. He's talking about a resort. I don't care. What we need to do is demilitarized zone for both nations. Everybody participates, play nice. And if we want to do anything to help them rebuild, I say a really nice airport and a brand new UN headquarters right there in Gaza. That would be a good fix. The UN's had a lot to do with the problems we have around the world. So I think that they should be right in the middle of
it. I like that. That's great. And as a New Yorker, that's amusingly funny. It's an interesting thing to live and work close to the UN, but yeah, stick them over there. I agree. I think that would solve some of their issues because I think they lack perspective.
I think that has a lot to do with it, and getting behind into the General Assembly and the Secretariat building, which has 5,400 panels that are hung on the outside of it. I'm sure that we could get enough people to sponsor the moving of one panel from New York to the Middle East, and we could pay for the whole thing. I think to fly a C-130 over there, an overseas flight should run, crew included, right around $200,000. We can start taking donations as soon as we're ready.
I like it. I like it a lot.
But we do need to be more cautious about who we hang around with. And UN, NATO, they're both giving us a little bit more trouble than they're worth right now.
I couldn't agree more on that one. Something that's usually in the same topic. Aaron asks, do you believe members of Congress should be allowed to have dual citizenships?
And I know where this one's going. That's the Israeli citizenship, which is one thing that a lot of folks have picked on. I'm going to go with, if you swear allegiance to our flag, that you place yourself exclusively under the jurisdiction of the United States. And if you can't do that, then you shouldn't be going to serve your constituents if you're being double-minded. So it's kind of like why we wouldn't have a president that was born in England, because pretty soon they'd be pretty well attached to the monarchy and wanting to bring the monarchy to here. And if your fealty is going to be to the United States, and as a patriot, I say that's the only fealty I have is to the United States and my neighbor.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject for some people, and I would say this might lose the people who liked your answer as far as whether or not they like me, but I think maybe like a grandfathering in of something where you're not necessarily kicking members of Congress out because they currently have a dual citizenship, but I agree that it really shouldn't be too much to ask that our representatives to Washington are just thinking about their district. And unfortunately, very few of them are, whether it's dual citizenship or just being bought and paid for by someone else. In some ways, the people with dual citizenships are less bad than some of the ones that are just bought out by like a Lockheed Martin or a Raytheon. But if you want to represent two groups of people, like two nations of people, that's what places like the UN are for. And I genuinely think, to kind of tie it back to the last conversation, I think there should be more people with dual citizenships on the UN. There should be more people trying to bridge those gaps and bring various countries together. And I think dual citizenships is a cool thing, but not for our congressmen. Like that's just a class of people that I think shouldn't be included in this. They should be worried about home.
My wife is a dual citizen of Taiwan and here, so
cool.
Yeah, she's not going back anytime soon. I'm not going to go to war with China because she's because of her heritage. That's not the way that works. In my opinion, I'm not a dual citizen of anything. I'm Florida all the way, 25 years here. So, and also I can see also the other side too. I know that like Ilhan Omar has been picked on quite a bit in that respect as well. And when it's that blatant, it's, I know that there have been censure motions for her, and that's the best way to deal with these things. But when the constituents in an area elect a particular person they're the ones that are really responsible for the person in that office. So if we've got an area that is entirely Somali Muslims, that's part of the not melting pot where we, or if it's an entirely Italian neighborhood, not picking sides here. So if you come to the United States and want to thrive here, English is a great language. I speak it moderately well. But it's a language of success here, and it's even overseas people teach it as the language of money. And if you're finding yourself in an enclave type of community where the only language spoken is that native to another land, not really as much of a part of the neighborhood as I'd like you to be. And I want more neighbors. I think fully that we can get behind better immigration than we had during the last 4 years for certain. Something to the effect of, coupled with the fair tax, we can bring more companies back to the U.S. And with the fair tax program, you can see we would have the Mercedes-Benz headquarters. They would want to move to Detroit because there would be such a good tax break for them, not having to taxes and all that they have to deal with over there. They would move here because it would be so profitable for them to do so. So that would mean more jobs here in the States. And we've got a lot of BLM land. Why the government owns so much, we may never know. But we could also put that to good use with, let's say, a place like Apple, Nevada, where we move the factories from China to Nevada or California or wherever, and without a corporate tax hanging over the people's heads, over the employers' heads, they can hire more people. And they can say, okay, we can hire people at a better wage. Great. So let's build a factory. Let's build a town. This is already starting to sound bad to those who may, like Woody Guthrie and all, and I do. But we allow the unions we allow the people to organize, to pick their own union, to pick their own representation, to say, these are our safety issues. We should address them before somebody gets hurt. That's, in my opinion, one of the ways that unions have done great things for the American workers. And OSHA was essentially brought out to destroy unions. Unions could take that job back over of worker safety, worker well-being, and go about their business. Now, if their contributions are starting to lean, as some do, in a wrong political direction, that's why being very involved in your local is a wise move, because those are your coworkers and your people that are going to be, sticking up for you. So being involved is always good. So then, back to the natural workflow here. Those workers that are coming over from, Mexico, Honduras, Laos, Lagos, Nigeria, wherever, they'll have a place to go, where not send money back home, bring your family, go to the schools that are built in the towns, learn American civics, learn what it means to be an American, learn that we drive on the right side of the road, that we don't park in the middle of the interstate, that we have certain standards that we uphold here, and that's, they're reasonable. Mm-hmm. So doing that, we can say, now, after time, you can take your citizenship exam. Feel free to move around about the country. You're probably going to be a better citizen than some of the people that we have running around as criminals now. So, yeah. and also not barring people that are living here from, that are already citizens from going to these places. I think that would be a very good way to bring manufacturing back. I've spent, 24 solid years in manufacturing, so I've got a little bit of that in my blood. probably a little bit of cancer too, but whatever. Um, let's let anything into existence there.
Yeah, it seems like in some ways it seems sounds kind of outlandish, but I've been kind of toying with a policy. It's very similar to that for quite some time, of like a middle ground, like a staging area for immigration and for immigrants. It's not the ICE detention centers on the border. Let's not introduce them to what being a criminal in America is like. Let's introduce them to what being a thriving American is like. An actual town with an actual place to live and an actual job and an actual life, not 3 hots and a cot in a cell. That's not the American dream we want to be showing people. But give them a chance, and in those kinds of a situation, you get to be a lot more lax in who you do let in to at least that area, because you're not necessarily endangering the general population of the rest of the country with anyone that you're letting in. But you get to let them prove themselves as either a good or a bad person, because I even feel like a criminal record from their previous country shouldn't be disqualifying for immigration into the United States. If you were a violent gang member in, you said Honduras, that you're probably coming here to get away from that, not to continue that here.
Some don't, and that's why I think, like you said, kind of keeping folks, especially like that, somewhat separated. And was it Bukele down in El Salvador? He's done a lot with the gang cleanups, and people are talking about doing that here. And there's a lot that can go wrong when we give the government that much power. Sure, we can take everybody who looks like a criminal and throw them in a box and forget about them until they die. But when the next administration comes in and they want to take you because you look like somebody that they don't want to have to deal with, they'll put you in the box. So we don't necessarily need to be, so worried about that. But yeah, there's people that, by, if you were looking at the old Cold War standards of criminals, people in communist countries that wanted freedom, they would be criminals. So, the tests of, do you have the gang tattoos on your face? You might not fit in at a normal job interview. Yeah. Middle ground, and if they want reform, again, very much a Christian, very much believe in repentance. That if your old life is your old life, if you leave it behind, that's great. But one thing that really helps in that is a community outside of a gang, because gangs are a community. And that's kind of what people see as being, the only community that they have to escape to, where I can probably tell you about one that I'm involved in that's nicer.
Yeah. And it's not always even a bad community. It's one of the better ones that a lot of people have access to, as far like the gangs. I living in Brooklyn for a good chunk of my adult life, I've definitely had my fair share of interactions with people. I mean, even up here in upstate, I lived in Syracuse for a while too, and 9 times out of 10, they're not doing anything gang-ish. They're hanging out and smoking weed and playing video games and having a good time, driving their cars around or whatever. It's just a group of friends that are built around usually some sort of a criminal enterprise, like drug dealing or something else. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to a gang member's house, it's to just smoke weed and chill out and maybe play some FIFA or some NBA.
Well, I'll go and skip the weed part myself, and
Fair enough.
To each his own.
Yeah, but it definitely, I know a bunch of people that grew up in a situation where their best bet was to get into one of the better gangs and establish that sense of community that way, because their alternative was nothing, or one of the worst gangs, that didn't really have that sense of community. And yeah, if that's what you were looking for, especially if you're coming from a third world country where the gangs run the country, if you're coming up from almost anywhere in Central America or Mexico, there's a lot of times you don't have an option. It just has to do with where you were born. That would be like calling us both a member of the U.S. military gang, because we were born here and we pay for them. We pay their salaries. We elect their leaders. We, do all the things. We're participatory in that gang. Like I said, my whole family's in that gang. I'm the only one that didn't join up. And that was hard at a time. My grandparents, like all four, the three of them that were still alive, were all like, "What do you mean you're not going into the military? Like, are you serious?" So I can somewhat relate to that. And I wouldn't want to be pinned for every crime that our military has committed. So I definitely think that we need to be a little bit more, Christ-like in our observation of people. Like you said, if your old life is your old life.
And that's again, one of the measures is, a tree by its fruit. So you're one of the best churches I've been to was actually out in Ontario, California. Went out there to visit some family, some of my wife's family, and we ended up going to a great church. A lot of the guys in there, they had neck tattoos. Some of the ushers, and it was like, okay, this church is doing good work, because they were there instead of out on the streets or engaged in criminal enterprise. They were moving in the right direction. So, and that's all we can really hope for. So if people do want to escape, by all means. But even now, again, like the last 4 years have been not that great. The abuses of the asylum system, there's a lot to be said about that. Saying everybody's an asylee because we're good and every place else is bad. Well, no, a lot of countries are really great if you just had a different government or less government in it. That would be much better for us all. But at this point, it's really kind of boils down to we need to be a little more cautious right now, taking a very slow approach to any new immigrants because of what happened in the recent past. We took on too many too fast, and now we need to sort everything out.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see if the other side ended up doing the same thing, but for like European immigrants, and not even necessarily as a racially based thing, but if they try to flip the script on, everyone from Europe is an asylee because they're escaping socialism.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is something to be said about that. I know that there's a lot of globalist concerns over there as well. That once they formed the EU, all those many years ago, it really kind of cemented some of the stakeholder as opposed to shareholder type of looking at the world as equity instead of equality. Those buzzwords that fly around in the Davos crowd, those are places where we need to be focused on saying that's not how we do things over here. We don't do that. That's not our way of life. If just like anything else, if you think it's a good idea, you pay for it. And if it's too expensive for you to afford, form an organization and don't call them a government because I didn't ask for it. It's like with the Mexico City rule of the funding of abortion by tax dollars. In the Reagan administration, that ended up being a big touchstone. So people said, okay, we're going to ban the use of government funds for abortion. Great. And next thing you know, after Clinton gets in, he repeals that order. And then Junior gets in and he reinstates it. And then Obama, then it just keeps going back and forth. how about nobody pays for anything that's not specifically enumerated in the Constitution, which is precious little. Let's start there. That if I had the magic wand and could wave it over everything and say, where do we start? We start back, at 1791, where we were, that's where we start. 16th Amendment was one of the worst things that's happened to the country, by a long shot. So that's something that we need to do about getting rid of. And even portions of the 14th Amendment, the part where we say that if you've been committed of a crime or you've been convicted of a crime, that the state is allowed to use you as slave labor. That's been abused way too much. One of the great books that a local Florida boy has to read is "The Devil in the Grove," and about the Groveland boys who were basically hemmed up by a local sheriff in the days when you could pretty much just get away with anything if you were the law. And it happened right here locally, essentially. Some of the trials were here in Marion County. So nothing good comes of having too much government. I'll say that for a brief synopsis.
Yeah, I definitely that's one of the most unconscionable things that is still widely accepted as okay in today's society. It blows my mind how okay people are with bad people being slaves still.
Yeah. Like I said before, you're not going to spread freedom with bombs. You're not going to spread good ideas with beating someone into them or depriving them of things. Like your 6-year-old, he's not going to understand exactly why he wasn't allowed to do the thing, but he's going to remember being deprived of his liberty for a moment. So that may or may not have the desired effect, but
fair enough.
It's like I don't have all the answers to all the questions, but when it comes down to how we treat people, the Victorian values of one man in one prison cell, the rehabilitative way that we can do that is more of a direction that we need to move than a punitive corporate model, which we have now, where the prisons are privately run for profits, and run by judges that sometimes are corrupt. That I've seen personally, locally. They know where I live, so we can avoid all of that mess. But there's a lot to be said about how we're doing the criminal justice system, who's getting involved, and for what. When using the George Floyd incident for example, Derek Chauvin didn't know George Floyd, didn't live in the neighborhood, didn't have any idea what was going on in the neighborhood, how people were living. Again, if I ran the zoo or in Libertopia, it would be the people that have authority over the area should live in the area. They should at least have the requirement. Even here, I see sheriff's departments from, I think, 3 different counties where I live, just in my neighborhood. They bring the prowl cars home with them, and they don't live where they police. Might not be the worst way to solve some of our community issues.
Yeah, for sure. And it's wild because most places, at least especially like major cities, have policy where it's not even that you can police a place you don't live, it's that you can't police a place you do live. Like I know specifically like in New York City, the NYPD have that as a rule that you are always policing a different neighborhood than the one that you live in, because they don't want societal repercussions for things they don't. It was originally instituted as a policy to try to protect the cops from like maybe backlash from having to do their actual job. If a bad guy that's beloved by the neighborhood has to go to jail, then you're kind of putting your police in a predicament, which I understand that scenario, but I feel like it's such a rare scenario to be basing policy off of versus them now just being able to do whatever they want and get away with it because nobody around them knows them. It's not, you should, if you do a bad job as any government employee, whether that's Department of Sanitation or a police officer or a congressman, you should have to worry about, is my local coffee shop still going to give me my coffee tomorrow morning? Are they going to spit in it first? Or, is the dude at the sandwich shop going to like punch my sandwich before he hands it to me? You should have to worry about that kind of stuff because that's just like the base level that everyone has to worry about. I have to worry about that. If I'm a complete piece of shit, my local gas station's not going to be nice to me either. And I think that, to your point, if just that level of accountability was given back to the government employees, it would change a lot overnight, I think.
Yeah, that's something that for sure, like if you don't have to live where you police, let's say, like how does that work out in New York City? Seems to be one of the most crime-ridden places. That didn't work, so maybe it's time to try something new. Maybe, because I can also see, if you do catch somebody, Tyler's on the side of the road, walking down the street smoking a joint, and we don't do that in public. You can just say, "Hey, Tyler, I told you, throw it out, put it in the gutter." Do that at home. You don't do that on the street. He didn't need to go to jail. He just knows that every time he goes out and smokes dope in public, he's getting it dumped out because somebody knows who he is, and it happens. Doesn't, get put in prison with felonies and all of that, and be run through the system that he probably can't afford to be run through. It's not the greatest way to really deal with things. So finding that balance of if you are part of the community and things do start going sideways, like with becoming too friendly with the criminals, then that's something that the people who live in your neighborhood should be able to say, we don't want that guy as a cop anymore.
Yeah, and as a pot smoker, I can corroborate that idea. Like if I was throwing out half of every joint I smoked outside, I wouldn't smoke outside. That would work on me real quick.
Real simple solution, since drugs have won the war on drugs, congratulations. It's time to negotiate the peace. And that, I think, is probably one of the best ways to do it, because we haven't really come across a lot of people that want to, we've got the libertarians that are like, smoke them if you got them. And then we've got the others that are, there's a lot like me that say we have to be metered in this or we're going to lose the privilege again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you're going to see the prohibitionists come back out and say, we have to start locking people up for smoking dope or whatever. Now, I'm not going to go fully and say everybody has the right to do heroin at an elementary school. That's foolish. It's time and a place for everything. And, if you have trouble with your neighbor who smokes on their back porch because it stinks, maybe that should be an indicator to the smoking neighbor that, if you don't want to stink up your house, I don't want to smell it either. Maybe let's do that except in your house, or, find some other better way to deal with matters rather than, locking people in the box. So,
yeah, definitely agreed. One more question from Aaron in the comments. Have you or will you sign the term limit pledge?
I have not signed it, and I'm on the fence on term limits because we have there's two ways to deal with this. So let's say I am the next Thomas Massey and everybody loves everything that I'm doing, and that, if you can't tell, I'm a bit of a fanboy. If the people of Kentucky want him to represent them, they should be able to have that option. Now, if we do it by way of a ballot measure to say we want to exempt this particular candidate from term limits, that's a way around that. But that's something, again, that can be held a little bit more at a local level. I can see that as being a solution to, yes, we can have term limits, but yes, we can have the best representation that we can get. And with the way that the political system is turning out, where the Randy Fine couldn't be reached for comment. We're not really getting a lot of our best as representatives. So with people being a little bit more involved in that, the more people that get involved in politics, the better, I think, because we'll hear more of those voices that we want to hear. So should Thomas Massie be training up his successor? Absolutely. That's the greatest way that we can get a long lineage like Ron Paul and Rand Paul. We can see them. We can see that leadership moving through and being a great way to run the government. Now, I don't know Rand Paul's family situation, or if he's got young sons or daughters to train up in that fashion. But if he does, they're going to do great too. And even with term limits, if he's able to bring something more than just tribalism to government, that's a great thing. So, yes, I would be willing to sign the term limits pledge, absolutely, without hesitation, but also with knowing that if we can have the representation that we desire, if we ended up with another Reagan, if we could say, well, for a third term, and having a reasonable length of time for term limits as well. 2 terms as a president is pretty reasonable for a good turnover. But for a congressman, I would say 6 terms, giving you a solid 12 years, and 2 terms as a senator. Again, 12 years. That's enough time to do something, and it's enough time to make a real difference in policy one way or the other. Or, as the case may be with a congressman, if you're not doing your job, 2 years is good enough. But people are doing anything other than voting one way or the other. As Nancy Pelosi said, AOC is going to get elected no matter what if she's on the ballot, because you put a D on this glass of water, and she's getting elected in that district. So breaking that paradigm is going to be difficult, but it's also going to be very important.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you on the kind of sitting on the fence on term limits for the most part. I lean towards yes, but with that saying, I hear a lot of people argue against it for the exact reason that you gave. Like, are you going to kick Thomas Massie out of Congress? And I think he would only have one more term left, right? I'm pretty sure he just got, I think he's in his 5th term currently. So I think he would have one more re-election left. If not, this was his 6th. So no more Massie, no more Rand Paul. He's definitely gotten reelected as a senator at least once. It's tough to sell that to libertarians sometimes.
Yeah.
But I take a kind of callous approach to it, where I think that if Thomas Massie can't have a successor that is as good as him, and his endorsement carries enough weight that person wins, then he's not as good of a leader as we think he is.
Yeah.
And and I say that because I know his chief of staff, and I know that it's Matt Gertler, who was a congressional candidate himself in Georgia in 2020, and was a fantastic candidate, and unfortunately lost the Republican primary to a mediocre, average establishment Republican. But now he lives in Kentucky. He's Massie's chief of staff. If Massie were to ever step down and endorse him, I think he would be even better than Massie is currently. He's a very smart dude. He's got great policy positions. I think he's more libertarian than Massie. as far as just like the couple of things that we disagree with him on, he would be great. And so I only say that because I know Massey actually is good. But if he were to fail at that mission of being able to, in 12 years, you should be able to find somebody to replace you.
Yeah, that again is why giving a long enough time to say, somebody better do something, because the clock is ticking.
Yeah. All right. Well, before I let you go, give the people one more, elevator pitch of why they should show up on April Fool's Day and check the Parrott name on the ballot, and tell people how they can find more information about you, donate, all that good stuff.
Well, the best reason is I'm not one of them. No, realistically, I'm going to DC to represent the people of Florida in the 6th District. They will be my absolute priority. Whether Donald Trump says something right or wrong, I'm going to say it's right or it's wrong by the way that the voters have voted for me. That's the true answer. My phone line will always be open. It will be the first thing you can do is call, and you'll get me or my staff. That'll be, I want to put out the fires before they get too bad for you coming through DC. Nobody wants to deal with the federal government for anything. So me being there to assist you at some level to better navigate the swamp, I'm all about that. So, and if you liked it all what I had to say tonight, I hope that has some bearing on your vote, and I hope you spread the word far and wide. You can find me at my mostly rudimentary website at www.andrewparrottforcongress.com/donate. That's a great place to find the donate button, because every dollar that you send out is another voter reached, and hopefully another mind changed, that smaller government is better.
Amen. Guys, you heard him. If you like what he had to say today, whether you live in Florida or not, go on over to that website, throw him a couple of bucks. This is, as we talked about at the very beginning, this is an interesting opportunity. It's a special election. It's a little bit out of the norm, and it'll be given a lot more limelight and attention than the average races that you might have been able to support last year. This is going to be a fun one. And Florida's been doing some weird but cool shit as far as politics goes lately. So I think that there's a solid chance. There are a lot of people in Florida that are starting to change their opinions on the two-party system more than in most states, I feel like. And so go give Andrew some money. Come on back next week. We've got Tommy Cruiser from Project Liberal is going to come on and talk to us. But definitely like the video, subscribe to the channel, do all the things. Andrew, thanks so much for coming on. This was great.
All right, well, it was my pleasure. I thank you, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Oh yeah, guys, we'll catch you back here next week. Until then, keep up the fight.